29th of August, Ukraine Forum, Ukraine Media Center starting its work. My name is Svetlana Chiparenko. Let's find out the results of the nationwide study on educational losses. We'll have a presentation of these results. And we have Ruslan Gurak, head of the State Education and Quality Service of Ukraine, and Olena Zaplotinska, head of the Access to School Education Initiative, SURGE project, or SURGE. So, what's necessary to do such a study and what were the prerequisites? Hello, greetings, my friends, and thank you for the possibility to present the results of the study. And speaking about the necessity to do such monitoring tests, the State Educational Service of Ukraine, it's their job to do such monitoring tests to find out what's happening in the educational domain. We used a systematic approach, and we started with our partners, the SURGE project, and we started doing these monitoring tests during the pandemic. And we were wondering how the pandemic affected the education results. And then we declared, and we had an agreement, we're going to do such tests every year. And the study that we're going to talk about, we're covering 6 and 7 year. We will do that in 2023 through 2025 to find out if there is a progress. Speaking in more details, this testing is a part of a series of events. So we surveyed school staffs, parents, to find out whether they think that the war and the pandemic affected the educational process and the test results. And then in September, we'll do another study and we'll measure social and emotional skills acquired by school children. Give me a minute. I will switch the slide. Can you see the presentation? After this survey and before this survey, we came up with several hypotheses that could affect the study results during the war. It was a limited access to the educational process, the worsening of the mental state, the loss of motivation, losses in academic hours, and it could affect the progress of children. And speaking about the test that we did and which we presented, of course, both parents and teachers showed that they think there was an effect on the test results, and they differentiated, they varied from region to region. But our study was about to test the assumptions declared by teachers and parents, and we did that. How we did it? Our experts, together with the SURGE team members, designed tests, and experts had a good job on them, and they were QA'd so that they can comply with all of the requirements to the standardized test. And together with the Educational Analytics Institutes, we did resultative sampling, including 280 schools. Of the representation requirements where it should include both villages and cities, both remote and offline education. School children that study online outside of Ukraine were included, and also school children that are DPOs, IDPs. The test included math and Ukrainian language. To ensure high-quality testing, we did it within schools. School children used computers in their schools, and it was monitored by observers, experts, so that the test is conducted fine. What about those who studied online? Yes, we had certain requirements for them. Their web camera had to be on all the time so that we can see how it's going. And all of that testing happened on the nationwide schools online platform. And this is how we organized the work. Number of tests and the point distribution, I will tell you more about it in a minute, but the only thing I would like to tell at this point is that school children's progresses were distributed on a 4-level scale. Low, below average, above average, good. And the tests were average. We didn't want to engage any hard tests. So if you ask me about the overall results, and Olena will talk more about that, we can say that the majority of 6 to 8 year students had an average progress. They had 15 to 50% of test points. I would like to point out that 8-year school children had a better progress, and the above average and good level points were better than those of the other students. We tested their cognitive level as well, and when they had to demonstrate their common sense, thinking, their progress was a bit worse. And of course, the progress was affected by other factors we want to talk about as well, and I'm talking about effects of their location, gender, social status, and we'll talk more about that. Well, let's elaborate on that. Elena, can you please tell us about results? What are the gaps and what's the situation in different regions? Yes, we can analyze that by classes and subjects, and let's find out what was the most difficult thing for school children. But the tests that these children did were of optimal difficulty and easy tasks. We didn't have many difficult tasks within the test. And also these tests covered material that they studied for the previous 2 years. So 6-year students were tested for the 5th and 6th year. And this was the material that they missed, and they should focus on that based on the test. And this is the diagram. So mostly we have a hit on the medium level. They could gain more than a half of the points that they were supposed to get for a test. And also there are 7% of children, they had a basic level. They only could do a couple of tests, couple of tasks. And speaking about the secondary school, there were a bit around the average, and this is the subjects they worked with. The math tests included 4 different subjects. You can see them here. And the most difficult thing was geometry, geometric shapes and geometric numbers, and they didn't do a good job. Only a small percentage could complete all the tests. And in 6th year, geometry, the children started to study geometry only when they went online, when the pandemic started. So they started studying the abstract subjects online. This is why the result was so poor. 8th year, school children, you can see the results on the screen. This is mathematics on the left and Ukrainian language on the right. Yes, they most of them are around average, but at least we have more percentage of children that reached the above average and high level. And it's mostly affected by the test itself more than their achievements. This is the test for Ukrainian language, 8th year. These are the different subtopics of the subject. That's what they learn in this 8th year. And these subjects, they did a poor job on some of them, and the results are pretty unstable. So these are the results. Their achievements is not something they can rely on when they change the year. And now these people, they leveled up to the 9th year, and this is something that has to be considered for the 9-year students. The tasks were designed so as to consider 3 different cognitive levels: knowledge, application, and common sense. And they do a better job with knowledge, like they can recall something or they can manipulate numbers, mostly simple tasks. When they need to use common sense or cognitive process or applying knowledge in a specific situation, they don't do such a good job with that. And these are the tasks that they didn't do a good job with that. They had a pizza box and they wanted to find the area of the surface. If the pizza is 17 centimeters in diameter, it's pretty simple tasks. Only small number of children completed the test. They had to model, they had to apply their knowledge in specific situations, so it was pretty difficult for them. Ukrainian language. For 6th year school children, they had to use their competencies in reading. I mean, to read and understand what they read. And it was a pretty difficult task for 6th year students. They had to read the text and understand the point of the text. Only 11% of school children completed the test. And this is something to reflect upon. The same situation with the 8th year. Like in mathematics, they had to recognize geometric shapes. Pretty easy tasks. Some school children completed these tasks, but when they had to use analysis or common sense, it was more difficult for them. You can see an example here. They had to model speed of movement against the flow of a river. And then if it's just speaking about Ukrainian language, speaking about reading, they are pretty good with punctuation, but only 1/3 completed the test successfully. And when they 1/3 understood the point of the text. Factors that affected the success of the test. You can see the distribution by gender. School children filled out the questionnaire, and we could find out what were the factors behind these results. So, can you elaborate on that, please? Yes, we can see that there are different characteristics that affect the test results, but our tests have shown that the factors, this is what we tested the first. That was gender, and we can see that gender doesn't really affect 6-year school children. However, in 6th and amongst 6th and 8th year schoolgirls showed better results than boys. The second thing that I would like to focus on, the results in Central and Eastern Ukraine for mathematics and Ukrainian language. The children did a better job than their peers in other regions. Those children that lived abroad and did the test online, they had better results than their peers that studied in Ukraine. More than that, we also analyzed additional factors that affect the educational processes. Well, we have more surveys of that, different monitoring tests that were done by the Ukrainian Educational Center that showed that wherever educational environment is better, children did better job doing the tests. Answers of our participants show that wherever children had a separate room for studying, where they had separate computers they could work on, these children had better progress. Besides, children claim that wherever parents care about their results, where they help children do their homework, they had better results. And speaking about homework, there's an interesting trend here. We have different discussions about whether they need homework or how many hours they should dedicate to homework. In our test and in our survey, we could see that children that always do homework at home, they also do better with tests, show better results. So factors we're talking about here, we will definitely show them in the complete form, and we will publish the full text of our research. It's pretty big, but interesting, and I think experts will find it interesting interpreting the results. Today, we will just publish a small overview of the results where our partners can look it up. Why we're doing this in the first place? And this is a good question. Why we should focus on that before the academic year begins? COVID, war affect Ukrainian education very much, and they affect our school children's results. 6-year school children are less resilient to these challenges, and I think they show less progress than their than children of the 8th year. This is probably why probably happens because the pandemic started when they were in the 4th grade or in primary school, and this is why they had better progress. And the third thing, we want to do that, and we did that because teachers who will start working in the new academic year, we want them to focus, to see the results. And we want them to consider their test results and see what they need to focus on. I mean, the material for the previous year, what they need to enforce, because we don't want our children to find themselves in this educational gap or trap. And Olena will talk about the diagnostic tools, and we're inviting all of the experts to analyze the subjects and test results so that we can quickly correct the methodology behind different subjects, because we can see the trend when the same subject has different progress with children. Because so we need to change our approach to at least mathematics and Ukrainian language. How can you do that? What are the tools to make it happen, to fill in the gaps? We talked about tools that we use to complete that monitoring test, and any teacher can do that. In order to fill in the gaps, we need to go through a certain sequence. We need to understand what we need to focus on. For teachers, we have diagnostic tools on the official platform. Any teacher can use that, any parent can use that, and these tests are available for any subject for 5th, 7th, and 9th year. Number 2, the system, the official educational system, generates a detailed report that shows what you need to focus on collectively, individually for every child. And then the teacher creates a plan, focuses on the gaps, and then he can run the test a second time and see if there was any progress and find out if there's a work to do. So this is a available tool for every teacher and a parent. Do I understand you correctly that this test is focused on specific schools in order to fill the gaps locally? Because I think you raised a serious question. School children don't have analytical thinking. They memorize material very well, but they can't work with it. They can't apply it. And I think the problem is there for the last 20 years. Some teachers try to teach kids analytical thinking, and some just go with the flow. Maybe we need to change the educational process, the educational program, the curriculum. That's a very good question. When we started the reform called New Ukrainian School, we had lots of discussions about the new standard based on the competency approach. And the new standard is the first step from the old school approach, when children were fed information without being able to apply that knowledge. And the primary school standard and the new standard of the basic school set foundation that we talk about. However, that new Ukrainian school reform has stepped up, from the primary school, but we think that this test will show different results in a year, and I think children will be able to apply their knowledge better. They will be able to use their knowledge and have better hands-on experience. Do you have previous results, tests you could compare with, and to find out whether any change from before, from the pre-COVID era? Well, we are not talking about specific educational losses because this is the baseline research. This is the first research like that, so we will be able to talk about a trend when we do a second and maybe third study next year. Why did you cover 6th to 8th year students? Because we developed our diagnostic tools for these years. When kids level up to the 7th year, they have new subjects and they need analytical skills, and also the 9th year, it's a new level, new educational level, so we wanted to focus on these categories, on these educational levels, and I think we still have time to fill in the gaps before they switch to 9th year. Let's switch to the Q&A session. Do you have any questions? Yena Onishenko, Ukrinform. I have a question for you. How do you think we can overcome these educational losses? Maybe we can just use Western experience after COVID, using mentors, individual mentors, maybe having shorter vacations, or maybe you have your own ideas. Well, you asked a very good question, and we had a parliamentary committee meeting yesterday, the Committee on Science and Education, and they discussed educational losses among other subjects. And the Ministry of Education and Science is working on this, and there are many organizations, both public and governmental, that propose different models. The only concept that could resolve the problem doesn't exist. This is why we need a synergy of different efforts to understand what steps should be the first to fix and regain educational losses, and to make sure that children are more comfortable with overcoming these problems. This is why we focus on those who work with children directly, teachers. We are providing them with a tool that they can use to measure gaps and problem topics, subjects, to support children with these gaps. Speaking about the national level, again, yesterday on the committee meeting, they discussed this potential strategy. Let's wait for the results, and then we can have specific topics to discuss. Any more questions? I have a few questions, and we did a study, and we found out that our secondary education is not that good, especially in natural sciences. So what is... And one question is, can you compare the results. And also the final state examination, is it good enough to measure children's knowledge throughout Ukraine and in specific regions? Well, we can't compare these tests, PISA and this one. Well, this is mathematics, but we have different age categories and different tools. As far as I know, that the PISA results was the PISA test was completed, and the results will be available not next year, I think. Next year, yeah, right. And your second question about the final state examination, well, this is a question to the representatives of the Center of the Educational Quality. And the ministry approved the test. And as far as we know, they have a plan to design the new final state examination, and they have some plans to change it. The PISA report will be available on the 6th of December 2023. According to my information, it was completed, it was analyzed, but there are specific requirements for it to be available online. But PISA results for mathematics confirm our results. They correlate, definitely. And I guess after this report is available, we can have more discussion. Speaking about final state examination, well, we can do it next year, in 4th year, 9th year, so I guess it's going to happen. Thanks a lot. Well, hopefully your study will help us fill these gaps that we have in our educational system. And well, to remind you, we talked about educational law system.